Welcome to the Rise and Form podcast. Welcome back, you guys. So this is part 2 of our chat with Pastor Dave, where we are continuing to talk about the importance of relationship to our design as humans. As well, this is also the last episode of this season, of season 1, which is crazy, but don't worry because we're already in the works of recording season 2. So look forward to season 2, where we're going to start applying some of the principles and knowledge that we learned to relatable topics like depression, anxiety, trauma, resilience. Abe and I are going to be continuing to talk with each other and with other great guests. So do not miss out on season 2, which will drop really shortly after the end of this season. And in the meantime, enjoy this last episode.
Want me to jump in?
Yeah, jump in. I had a comment and it just flew out of my head.
I do want to say for all the listeners that Andre and Abe did send me a script and they haven't followed it at all.
We did.
Like, this is everything I
veered
prepared to say
immediately.
is, out the window. And I just
Let's
want to
get
thank you
back
guys
on
for
track.
that. Just relying on the Spirit here because I have to practice what I preach.
It's a part of the exercise,
It looked blurry. All these words down here.
Yeah.
It's more, we're hitting on it. We really are. Like, I think we're talking about the stuff that we wanted to. And Dave, if there's anything, maybe this is a good question to go to. I wanted to ask you about we are like and opposite, because I heard you preach on that. And
Yes.
I used that with a couple of unchurched people because I was like, this is just so true. If we can understand that. And so maybe you could just unpack that a little bit, what like and opposite means, because that's just...
Yeah, and I'll give a little context
Yeah.
just so people are tuning in
Yeah.
and understand where that's coming from. In Genesis 2, we get the story of Adam and Eve being created, and Genesis 1's like the big picture, like creating the cosmos and all of the world and all of humanity, and then Genesis 2 it zooms in and gives us a little bit more of a detailed, it's almost like a retelling again, a smaller section of that story in Genesis 1, and we have Adam's there, and God parades all the animals out in front of him, and then he names them, which we think is weird. Man, he had to come up with a lot of names. But really in the Bible, names aren't really about it's what you're called. It's about who you are, like what your life calling is, what your purpose is. This is why if you study Bible names, they often correspond with what the person actually ended up experiencing or doing or falling into in life, right? So Adam's naming these animals, and it's really, the story is saying he's evaluating them. He's evaluating them for companionship and for what their role will be in the world. And then it says, but there's no suitable helper that was found for him. And those words they've been used and abused in our culture for a lot of years. But ultimately, suitable for us is barely tolerable. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Helper is the person the junior assistant. And both those words do not mean that. Helper is really a word that's most often describing God, and it often in the scriptures describes military reinforcements. You're getting your butt kicked, if I can say that on this podcast. Am I allowed?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting your butt kicked, and you need another army to come in and enforce for you. And so that's the helper is coming. Often God's the helper, the person of strength to save your hide.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that kind of a different way of thinking about that? When you think about Eve,
Yeah.
Adam's really hurting by himself here with the bears and the otters. And his soul is withering. Anyway, and then you get to suitable, which means like opposite. It's a like opposite. So it's this person is like me, but they're not like me, right? Oh, they have my intellect. They have my emotional capacity. They have my ability to analyze and think and feel and relate and connect and speak. They have this image of God on them that I have. They're like me. But they're not like me. They think a little differently than me and feel different and look different. It's this perfectly complementary relationship that's so equal. And it's so beautifully described in this passage where Adam kind of breaks into poem or song. And as out of Isha came, it's this kind of Hebrew poem. It's the first love song in the Bible. And it's really a great moment. Our English version would be whoa, man, woman, wow, whoa, man. It was a cheesy joke from 1962, but it's a really good one.
Wayne's World?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Something
Is that
like
what that's
that.
from? Yeah.
Well, Mike Myers, I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe. It feels like it could be. But yeah, I think, and that's the gift of Genesis 2. the like opposite gift. Have you ever hung out with someone just like you? Oh,
you just, what do we call it?
it's rough.
We call it projective
Oh
identification.
gosh, yeah.
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 Like just someone just like you. Like,
Yeah.
and then there's people who are enough like you, but enough different than you that
Yeah.
makes life fun. Like you
Yeah.
find that's why with some people there's just chemistry. Like you have enough in common, but you have enough different. And that's what we're created for. And we have this, and it's perfect in the garden. But now all that stuff's been corrupted by sin. So I think what you find in relational conflict is often, hey, the places where you're not like me are now offensive to me or frustrating to me, instead of something I can celebrate in you because you bring something to the table that I don't bring.
I love that word, celebrate. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's it. I guess we do say that, don't we? Celebrate our differences. But that's a really good word for it, because I think if you can just get that in your head, it's, wow, like, how did you think about it that way? And why do I want to like stomp on that? Why do I want to stop you from thinking that way? That's how you think.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Andrea,
Go ahead.
I was going to say before this, we were talking a little bit about my roommate in college who became one of my best friends in life. He's a financial planner. He's very steady. He's a farm kid from Nebraska. Like, they just are steady. They just tend to be steady, right? You get up every day, you do your chores, you do what has to be done, you just get it done. And you said before the show started, Abe, you were telling Andrea about me a little bit, that I'm a pure 7. So I'm, especially in my younger years, anything but steady.
Yeah.
Right? Let's go for it. And so one of the reasons why we were fast friends in college is I think Justin had a lot more fun in college because of me. And again, we could do a whole podcast on those stories. But I'm probably alive today because of Justin.
Wow.
Right? There was moments where there's that like opposite thing happening where I was like, this is a great idea. And he's, yeah, about 70% of that is a good idea. Right? And like that other 30% is going to kill us. And
we just need that
yeah,
guy,
sometimes we just need that person.
Yeah.
And
person.
so,
Yeah.
I'm over here like flashing through like different relationships.
Yeah.
Even in my marriage, people say like, we never put you two together. Like you two are just so different. And I was just thinking, I feel like I was thinking this just today. I was like, God, why do you put people that are so different together? Like, why? But I think the way that you put it, Dave, is so helpful. Like that the differences was almost, that too was corrupted. And maybe even how we see it, how we interact with it was corrupted in the fall. And how can we like reclaim that? Because I see that a lot, and I wish I could celebrate the differences more. Even in marriage, I let the differences get to me.
Yeah, and I think it's about, maybe even a way of thinking about it is, and it goes back to that place of living from security. Be secure enough in yourself, but also in your relationship, in your marriage, in your friendship, whatever, to allow that person to make us better than just me.
Yeah.
To make us better than just you.
Ooh.
Right? So and that requires me being more than myself and you being more than yourself.
Yeah.
Right? That means when you want to take a risk and I want to be safe, right? Sometimes that means you're going to be safe and come my way a little bit. And maybe it sometimes means I'm going to be more risky and go your way. And now we're going to be this better blend together. And learning to do that dance is the goal of marriage, right? How do I allow us to be better than me? How do I allow us to be everything it's supposed to be? And how do we learn how to follow you sometimes and follow me sometimes and go with your instincts in this moment and my thoughts on this other time? And that is part of that like opposite dance. And again, to think back to the garden and how easy and natural it was that Adam and Eve didn't even have to think about it. One thing they didn't have in Eden was counselors, guys.
Nope.
Yeah.
Man.
We're pastors, so, there it is.
Right. None of us would have jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
right? Yeah, but it's really significant. And I'm going to think about it from a different angle because of what you just said there. But it's this whole idea Adam is called to cultivate the garden. His whole, work is his primary task. And it's God just says, like, all the potentials here, cultivate the potential of this for flourishing in the world and flourishing for human life. So godly work is the work of cultivating potential for human flourishing. We think of godly work now as you're helping people read the Bible or pray or go to church. That's all good stuff, right? You're cultivating their spiritual life. But when you are an elementary school teacher and you're teaching a kid math, you're cultivating the potential of that child's mind to be all that they can be for their benefit and the benefit of the world and human flourishing. That's godly work without even mentioning Jesus, right? So it's this idea that, and that same principle applies. Godly work is, I'm trying to cultivate you, the potential in you, so you can be the best that you can be. And when we're operating from that place of security, I'm not threatened by your success. I'm not threatened by your flourishing, by your advancement. I'm blessed by it. I celebrate it, right? And again, one of the things that gets in the way of relationships is competition and envy and jealousy. We see that in Genesis 4 with Cain and Abel and the brother-sibling rivalry, like right away, right? Sin enters, and then there's competition and rivalry and jealousy and envy. But before that, it's all about, hey, I want you to be as good as you can be. And I think that's just part of that, what makes that like opposite dance work really well, right? I want us to be amazing, and part of us being amazing is you being amazing. Like, when you win, I win. When I win, you win. That sounds kind of cliche, but when you understand the layers of it, it really matters. And when you're operating out of that place, you're empowered to do it.
I think that I had this phrase in my head of, let's not be sloppy in relationship. Let's not be passive or lazy in relationship. Relationships aren't just to have a good time. There's this purpose behind it. And I think it's easy to see that, maybe easy-ish to see it in a marriage, but even in a friendship where it's like, how am I thinking of making my friend better? Where it's not just, oh, we have fun, but it's no, like, how are we really like trying to walk life with each other? Of course, in a parent-child relationship, I totally see that. That's so clear. So but all of them do have that. If we're not being sloppy or lazy in those relationships, we should be moving towards that flourishing part for both of us.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think part of that too is it's the freedom. Sometimes what makes that relationship work and what makes that person grow and live into their potential is just fun, right? Like sometimes what your friend needs from you is just to go have fun. So it's not just fun, but fun becomes a component of this larger goal, right? Early in our marriage, Amy and I saw a marriage counselor for a while, and we're pretty open about that. Like, and one of the questions that she taught us to ask each other is, what do you need from me? Because sometimes, like in our relationship, early on especially, like I was all about like progress and efficiency and getting things done. So Amy would come to me with some struggle, and then I would go into fix it mode, and it was just like I'd have great tips, man. Like I could just give. I'm a pastor. Like I got 7 thoughts on how we can improve this situation. Like right on my fingertips. And she's like, dude, I often now, and still to this day, 25 years deep, will say, what do you need from me right now? And I used to have a list of like possibles, but now she knows. It's just, I just need you to listen. I need you to take action. Like she's complaining about one of our kids. What do you need from me right now? I just need you to listen. I need you to validate my feelings. Oh, okay. I need you to go take care of this. Oh, okay. Like at least it gives me direction. Yeah. And I can still decide if I want to do that or not. Like we can work that through. Right. But it helps me understand. I think but it's back to, what do you need from me? And I ask that question because I want you to thrive and flourish, right? And what can I do to help? That's what's underneath that question, right? That's kind of what we're talking about.
And I love I don't know, the security or confidence that you have something to give when you ask, what do you need? Like I have something to offer. Because I think a lot of the time, like in so many settings, like one of the things I get to serve by playing drums at my church, and I often feel like I have an idea to make the sound better or to make the music better. And then I have a battle with, am I allowed to offer that idea? Am I allowed to share how I could improve this? And it's my own insecurity whether I should do that or not. Am I overstepping? That sort of thing. And I think we feel like that with our friends or in different settings too. Am I allowed to offer you this thing. And I think, yeah, perhaps it is an offering, isn't it? It's like a humble thing. It's not a, hey, let me make you better, but I'm just having this thought, or I'm having this idea about you. Can I offer that to you?
We have to earn the privilege of cultivating in people's lives.
Yeah.
Right? Like the worst thing ever is when people try and cultivate in your life. Like they come into your life with a rototiller to start tilling up the soil, and you're like, this happens to pastors all the time about how to do any and everything. And it actually is great for our egos, because pastors can be egotistical, and so it teaches us humility. But sometimes it's, you're trying to teach me about preaching. How many sermons have you ever preached?
Right. Yeah.
Earn the right to cultivate in my life a little bit, and I'll try to earn the right to cultivate in yours, which is some of that's about self-awareness, but a lot of it's just about humility and pride. And,
Totally.
Yeah.
Even in all this that we're talking about, it makes me think, okay, in relationship, then we need to have informed consent almost, of that one person can't go in and I'm just going to start cultivating stuff. It's no, we need to like have an agreement on this. And
and even with your example, Abe, it makes me think, whoever's the leader of the team, that you say to them, hey, I often have ideas on how to make this. Would it feel disruptive to you or disrespectful for me to chime in with those things? Is during rehearsal the time for that? After, before? Like, how do you feel about that? And then now you've honored them, and then they can either give permission or not. But if they, let's assume they do, now you can offer with confidence because you've been given permission, and now you have this back and forth thing happening that makes the whole team better. Because you're doing it together with consent, like respect.
Yeah, respectful.
Totally.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
So let's try to land this somewhere. I don't know where, because this just feels like I could just keep going.
Gosh.
Like it always goes like that. But maybe Dave, just giving some space for you to talk about what's dear to your heart or what's important to you. And even just Andre and I were thinking about who might listen to this, and probably similar people who you would think would listen to this, people that are searching or are trying to form themselves somehow, get some help, get some advice, figure out who they are, where they're going. So anything just that you would want to share, and you can, no time restriction on this, keep it to less than 5 minutes.
No time restriction. Abe's been in church. That's a dangerous
No,
thing
you're
to say.
good. You're really good with that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'll just riff for a second on it, because one of the things you asked me was, hey, like you did this series in Genesis for 8 weeks. Why 8 weeks? Like, why did you do a series in Genesis, and why did you do it for 8 weeks?
Yeah.
And I did it for 8 weeks because there's 8 weeks between the first Sunday in October and Thanksgiving, which is when we do our all church, like get into a group series. So that's why I chose 8 weeks. It's really a practical kind of lame answer.
That's so fun.
But also, because sometimes as Christians, we read the scriptures with a microscope. We get in and we read small sections, a few verses, a little chunk of verses, and we try to understand this little tiny patch of what the message is. And we miss the larger message of the narrative. And sometimes the larger message is the message. Oftentimes, I think the larger message is the message, and the smaller bits of information and the smaller parts of inspiration are actually just there to inform the larger message. And so even though we had to speed through those 11 chapters in 8 weeks, it forced us to not get lost in the weeds and to see the larger story, to see the bigger picture, to understand the grander narrative, and to understand those larger realities that really should be the ones that are driving us. Why I chose to preach Genesis, and this will be a little more personal, is because I had this moment this past summer. My son turned 17, and he outgrew me. Like, you can't see me on this podcast, but I'm a fairly large human. I've said for years I'm 6'5", but I really was 6'4 3/4. And now I think I'm 6'4 1/2. So I've started saying 6'4 1/2 now, because 6'4 3/4 felt like that's a fair roundup.
That's what the NBA players do.
Yeah, 100%. And so now I'm down to 6'4 1/2. But my son outgrew me, and he's a solid 6'5 now. And it was a pretty proud moment for him. He was like taller than Dad. He was just loving life. And he never thought he'd outgrow me, and he did. But it wasn't just that he outgrew me physically. There's this moment of, he's 17. He's going to be a junior this year. I have 2 more years with him. And I started thinking, what do I want to have him hear me preach on before he goes to college?
Wow.
Especially when he's old enough now to listen. When he was a 6th grader, he's sitting in there, but how much is he really listening to his dad's sermon? Now he's really listening, and then we meet and talk about stuff, and he's taking it in. So I'm like, okay. So I'm literally making decisions for the entire church's sermons based on my son's development,
man.
which is,
There's
I don't know
any
if that
better
feels selfish
reason.
or not.
Formation. You're really about how do I help
Right.
disciple my son?
And the first thing
Yeah.
I thought of was, he has got to understand the first 11 chapters of the Bible.
Wow.
He's got to understand Genesis 1 through 11.
Wow.
And so that's why I decided to do it, because I think the stuff in there is that central to who we are.
Ooh.
Like when we know that's our story, when that gets planted deep in us,
Wow.
that is who we are and whose we are. And it
Goodness.
explains things like, why do good sometimes, horrible sometimes? Let me talk about it in Genesis 1 through 11.
Yeah.
Let me show you why.
Wow.
Like, why is God good, but the world's so broken? Let me tell you why. There's so many of the life's huge questions that if you really understand Genesis 1 through 11 and dig in, like, why is there evil in the world? Like, where did it come from? And why does evil work the way it does? It's one of my favorite parts of that story is that the snake just pops up. All of a sudden, there's just this serpent. And people always say, did God create this? Where did the serpent go? Maybe that's just how evil works. That it often just comes out of nowhere and shows up in your life when you're least expecting it. That's how evil works in life, so be ready for it. That's the message of Genesis 1 through 11, right? And if we follow the truth of God, the tree of life, versus our own selfish desires and ambitions, the tree of knowledge and good and evil, our life is going to be so much easier and better that God offers us a choice and a way and a path, right? So there's all these things that I just want him to hear as he goes off. And I think it's a lot of that stuff is, and like you said, like you guys said, a lot of it's about relationship, right?
Yeah.
How do I live in relationship in this broken world with broken people? That stuff's important. Yeah. Cicero said, friendship improves happiness and abates misery by the doubling of our joy and the dividing of our grief. A friend of ours said that to me the other day, and I thought that is the message of Jesus, that we mourn with those who mourn, we rejoice with those who rejoice, right? That life is richer and better and more full when we do it together, because that's how we were created.
Yeah.
He created them, male and female, like together for relationship. He created them. Adam's in paradise. The word Eden literally means paradise. And he's miserable. How could you be miserable in paradise when you're there by yourself? And so a lot of us do life by ourselves, but we're supposed to do it with others, because that's when it gets good. Hard times get less hard, and the great times get more amazing when we do it together. And all that stuff, Genesis 1 through 11.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a great way to end.
I'm like, just even what you did, we could do 8 weeks on just that.
Right.
Like just each sentence, I was like, wow. And if for us or for anyone that's listening, it'd be like, what do we do first? Maybe we should just read that. Just read, unpack, talk about, and we'll put links to your sermons there as well. And I know on the website there's the worksheets too that people could do as well.
Yeah, and I'll also just, if you're a new Bible person, I'll also just give a shout out to the Bible Project. I just, sometimes, because the Bible is hard. There's a reason why people read it's tough, but the BibleProject.com will help you understand and get those narratives in some really easy ways with some great videos too. Thanks for my sermon plugs. If people want to listen to those, great.
Yeah.
But Bible Project is also a great resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel so grateful. I had a moment, probably 2 or 3 times in this, where I sat here because I'm so used to hearing your voice in my ears, listening to our sermons.
So you zoned out and started
I was a
thinking
little
of
bit
something
like
else.
walking around, just listening to Dave speak and teach and preach. It was amazing. Thanks for being
You're like,
here,
it's
Dave.
9 at night. Why am I thinking about lunch now? Oh, it's not Sunday morning.
No, but that was fantastic. I'd love to one day have you back and talk about other stuff as well. At some point. I don't know if you're ever willing to do that. But
Anytime, guys.
Definitely. This was an honor. Thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us and to try to summarize all the work that you've done in creating your sermons and everything, going with our flow.
Yeah, you guys are a blast. So anytime, I'd love to come back. So.
Awesome. You asked for it, and we're answering. A lot of you guys asked us who we are, which makes sense. Look, we're 2 therapists who are not used to talking about ourselves. But Abe and I did do a fun episode where we just talked back and forth, him and I, about ourselves, about Rise and Form. And so stay tuned to that episode coming out soon. And look forward to more in the seasons to come.